Good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to say hello and welcome you all to this webinar this afternoon. We appreciate you all logging in to hear this interesting topic. We've got a great one today, and I look forward to sharing this information with you. Before we get started, though, I did want to take just a couple minutes to share something with you about our firm that I just find very, very interesting. My name is Ed Wood. I am a financial planner and a partner with the firm. And over the past year and a half, we've been going through an exercise and really trying to understand and develop our culture as a firm. This is the first company I've been with that actually has gone through this process, and I just found it very refreshing and enlightening. So I did want to share just a brief tidbit of it with you. As we went through this process as a firm internally, 4 words kept coming up to the surface. They actually all happen to start with the letter C, coincidentally, but the first word is caring. So as a firm, you know, we care about each other internally as employees. We care about the communities that we work in, being good stewards in the communities that we're in. And most often we care about you as our clients, you know, understanding what matters most to you, being a real fiduciary to you, putting your needs ahead of our own. We're also committed. We're committed to developing long-term relationships with you and your family. You know, this time that we spend together helps us really have a better understanding, deeper understanding of what it is that is important to you as a client. We are curious. You know, we live in a world today where change is all around us, whether it's tax law change, political change, market change, legal environment change. We constantly find ourselves in a position where we are thirsting for more knowledge, thirsting for knowledge in a way that we need to educate and re-educate ourselves so that we are able to bring the best ideas to you and help you no matter what the situation is that you're working towards. Lastly, collaboration. So we don't work as individuals here at Cornerstone. If you've worked with us at all, you understand that we work as a big team. We collaborate internally with our colleagues, spending time together to get to know each other, to really work together on whatever it is we're working on for our clients. We collaborate with you as a client and your other advisors, your CPAs, your attorneys. We need those other opinions and abilities to talk to those external folks. We collaborate with other partners that aren't employees of Cornerstone. One's on the webinar with us today, Ira. You know, we need these different perspectives in order to stay ahead of the game, if you will. And this team approach really helps us bring those best ideas to you, no matter if it's financial planning or investment management. So, you know, I just felt that this is something that personally for me, and I would say it's probably the same for most of you, you know, you work with a lot of companies out there, whether it's in the financial investment world or whether it's not. How many of those companies actually either have a culture or share with their customers or clients the culture of the firm? I mean, this is something that we've chosen to live by. We've spent a lot of time cultivating this culture, and I just felt it was important to share it with everybody. So just a little tidbit about what happens sometimes behind the doors at Cornerstone. But anyway, I wanted to share that. And speaking of external partners, Ira Cox is on the webinar with us today. Ira is a friend of the firm. He's been working with us over the years. He spends a lot of time with our investment management group. He's a senior vice president at Amundi Asset Management, and he is going to introduce our speaker today that's going to give us a different side of estate planning. I mean, a lot of times when we work with you as clients, we're talking about legal documents and beneficiary designations and trusts and different things. But today you're going to get a really nice perspective on a topic that has always been around, but is not often talked about. So Ira, I'll let you introduce Julie, and you can take it from here.
Thank you, Ed, and Julie, thank you for joining us. Before I introduce Julie, I'd like to tell you a short story, and Julie has heard this, and it is a true story that's happened to me over the last couple of years. I had a really good friend that I've been playing golf with for years, and he knows that I'm kind of a classic car guy, and he told me that his father was somewhat of a collector, and he wanted me to take him to the house, and he wanted to take me to the house, but we never got a chance to go until his father had a stroke. And when his father had a stroke, things changed. His mother, soon after that, passed away while his father was ill. Father later passed away, and he called me in a panic. And he said, Ira, I don't think you understand. We have a real challenge on our hands. So I rode up to his home up in the country near Moxville. His father worked for an international paper for 45 years. Mother was a hairdresser. They lived in the same little house they'd been in for 60 years. And he collected stuff. And at the end of the day, he had 37 cars in the yard, 8 motorcycles, multiple tractors. And I can't tell you all the other miscellaneous collectibles that he had. The will was clear, but it addressed only the money. They died with $800,000 in the bank and a property that was free and clear. But the challenge was, what were they going to do with this stuff? So they have been locked up in probate for 2 years trying to get valuation and figure out how to liquidate. And these are things that could have been handled early on if they just spent some time talking about the possessions and being as concerned about those as they were with the money. So today we've got Julie Hall, who's a nationally known personal property expert who has assisted hundreds of individuals across the country in the daunting and often painful process of managing loved ones' possessions, distribution and dissolution, valuation of the items, the selling options, understanding the marketplace, and more importantly, minimizing family feuds as they clear out the family home. She writes and speaks on behalf of seniors, educating them on why it's important to plan ahead for their personal property before a crisis arises. And she also educates their boomer children, guiding them through the entire process on behalf of their parents. So Julie's greatest passion is educating the heirs, as executors and professionals who need to understand the complexity of these issues. Julie is well known by the American Society of Estate Liquidators and has become the #1 professional organization for estate liquidation professionals nationwide. I am proud and honored to introduce you to my friend Julie. And Julie, I want to thank you in advance for being with us.
Oh, thank you all very much for spending your time with me today. We've got some very interesting things that we're going to talk about because there's a lot you need to know about handling personal property when it comes to dealing with estates and estate planning. You know, this particular topic affects all of us, us personally, our estates, our spouses, our parents, grandparents, but it also includes dealing with your current clients as well as prospective clients. And I think that this topic that we're going to talk about today can really open up the door to having wonderful conversations to all of the above. You know, I think we need to start here. The Great Depression generation is roughly 55 million strong, and we've been losing them for the last 10, 12 years. And then we have the boomer generation, of which I'm a part of, and my generation is 110 million strong. So what this tells me as a professional is that the market is going to be flooded. It's already flooded with personal property. And we've begun to see the tsunami starting to swell a little bit as we've lost our parents and grandparents, and their traditional furnishings have come onto the market, and there's a lot of supply, but not a lot of demand. And we'll get into that in just a few minutes. But there's so much that needs to be dealt with And that is what we need to talk about. So most of my clients say to me, Julie, I don't even know where to begin. So my first suggestion for any individual or professional is that we must first understand value, fair market value, not an overinflated value. Why is it important that we know the value of our possessions? Well, because if you don't know, somebody else is going to know. And if you could trade places with me, you would see that that person who is in the know is often the face of exploitation. Sad to say, but it's true. We also need to know the values because you know the fish that got away story? It started out being really small, and every time they tell the story, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, my clients are the same way. What started out as a $50 antique chair is suddenly a chair owned by Abraham Lincoln and worth a fortune. So it's important to understand the values so that we can set our clients' expectations accordingly. It's very important, as Ira touched on, that we understand the values so that we can begin to minimize any contention among heirs or beneficiaries, and at the same time, make sure that they're not making hasty decisions, because hasty decisions lead to poor decisions. And when people call me, most of the time they're in a crisis mode, not a good combination. We need to know the values because of equitable distribution. Most of my clients' wills will stipulate for everything to be divided equitably. It's easy to do that with cash. It's not easy to do that with a sentimental heirloom. So it's important to assess and have values placed on that. Another reason we know values is because of these TV shows that have sensationalize the values of things. And let me tell you, as an appraiser, I'm not too crazy about those shows because I'm the one that has to look into the 93-year-old sweet little old lady's eyes and tell her that she does not have a $200,000 Navajo blanket, but she's got a replica that somebody bought on Route 66 in the 1970s. So I'm all about being transparent and realistic. And it's also important to know the values for the executor, because it is their fiduciary responsibility to not only understand what the estate has, but also to secure these valuables. Now, let's address some obstacles that I see my clients running into. After 31 years in the industry, it continues to astound me that my clients have failed to plan. They have spent a lifetime accumulating their things, buying them, shopping for them, going to every little antique shop between here and California. They display them. Some of them even insure them, but they don't make a plan for them after they pass away. So most people, I think, it's just my own theory, I think people are a little afraid to face their mortality. Back when I started in the industry, the statistic was that 50% of us do not have a will. Not a good idea to die without a will. Now, fast forward to 2021, the statistic has changed. It's between 58% and 68% of us do not have a will. This is a big obstacle because this means that people left behind, children, beneficiaries, heirs, they don't have a game plan. They don't have an understanding of what needs to be done. Another big obstacle that I see on a daily basis is sentimentality. As an appraiser, I have an objective point of view. I can look at an object and say, that's worth $150. And yes, I can show you some comparables to demonstrate how I arrived at that value. But it's not so easy to put a value on something that the children are attached to, because to them, the item is priceless. Other big obstacles that I see on a daily basis are emotions and behaviors. Some of those emotions are stemming from grief, and grief has many different faces. I also see probably enough greed to have lasted 3 lifetimes, and anger and resentment from the children that are left behind because mom and dad failed to plan. And they're upset because they have busy lives and they have to probably take months, if not years, to take care of a situation that they've been left with. So other obstacles that we see occasionally are greedy relatives, neighbors, friends. They do make themselves known, and it's really a part of the plan to keep them at bay. And let's also keep in mind that I think one of the biggest obstacles for you and for me is simply that the Depression era generation, or our elderly right now, they're known as the silent generation. They don't like to talk about their finances with their children. They've never been the kind of generation to air their personal stuff. And so this makes it really difficult for the children, the adult children, some in my age group and younger, to approach their parents and have open dialogue about what their wishes are. And hey, let's put together a game plan so that we can honor your wishes, as well as, make it a little easier for us. Now let's talk about mistakes that those that are left behind make. This could be a webinar all on its own, because I have written extensively about what I see happening. Mistake number 1, I think most of our clients and even our loved ones have unrealistic expectations. If they spend $10,000 for a Persian rug, today they think that Persian rug should be worth $15,000 or $20,000. That is not necessarily the case, because the market has plummeted for Persian carpets. And sadly, they may only get $1,000 or $2,000 for it. So it's up to us to be able to set expectations or refer to other professionals that can help them. They also have not taken into consideration everything that has changed. Our lifestyles have changed. We don't really have formal living and dining rooms anymore, or if we do, they're just getting dusty. We don't do a lot of formal entertaining anymore. We live a much more casual, simple lifestyle than we used to. Lifestyle's one reason. How about styles? Styles have changed too. Values have changed. People have changed. So much has changed. And while mother still thinks that her floral tapestry 1982 sofa may be worth a fortune because she cherishes it, I can assure her it's not. And it's my job to kind of set those expectations accordingly. We're also seeing simplification trends that are big. I mean, look at all the dialogue that's going on TV and programs that are talking about simplification and organization, and let's whittle down and live a simpler, easier life. Other reasons and mistakes that people make is they think that just because something is old, I have a house full of antiques, it's all very, very valuable, Miss Hall. Well, just because it's old doesn't mean it's valuable. They made stuff in the 1800s and 1700s that today is not desirable, therefore it doesn't have much value. So while it is a characteristic of value, it is not the most important one. We see them not planning ahead. And by this, I mean not only making a plan for their possessions, but they're not even thinking ahead to find resources like you and me who can help them in certain chapters in their own lives. They're not even thinking that way. And I would like to be a part of getting them to think that way more often. It's important to do this before infirmity or death take place. Now, not sharing final wishes, I think, is a really big mistake, because I see the adult children that are left behind. They're angry, They're completely befuddled and frustrated. And this does not last the week of the funeral. This lasts for many, many years. And you can no longer argue with them if they're not here. So the children don't have this vital information. Mom, Dad, we love you. We want to talk to you about what your wishes are. If something happens to you, we need to get some advance directives. But it gets a lot deeper than that. You know, where's the location of important documents that we need? Titles, deeds, medical statements, financials. Most of the time when I go into these houses, there's just piles of documents that have not been organized or filed appropriately. And so once again, the children are left to sort through these things for so long. Other things they need to ask about in advance are keys. Let's say Dad's got a muscle car in the garage, but nobody knows where the title or the keys are. Passwords are also very important to know. Or if they've got alarms, how to deactivate the alarms. These are all things that need to be discussed in advance. So the bottom line is, with all of these mistakes and many, many more, not to do anything until you get a professional in there to first assess what they have, what their goals are, and then come up with a game plan that is tangible and a list that they can follow. They will be more apt to follow a list if somebody provides it for them. Now, what factors affect value? Well, certainly the current economy is a big factor in value, as well as the personal property market. I'm going to try and make this as simple as I can. We already talked about so many traditional furnishings flooding the market. And when you have that, and then you have my generation who is actively downsizing and simplifying our own lives, we're kind of saturating the market a little bit more, getting rid of our own things. And then our children and grandchildren, well, they just don't want the painted china and the doilies and the figurines and such. So too much supply, not enough demand will drive the prices downward. Now, this is a problem in our future. I mean, I often worry about how much is going to end up in the landfills, and there are not enough landfills to handle the tsunami of stuff that is coming our way. Now, we did talk about styles and lifestyles. This has a tremendous impact on value. For example, mid-century modern or Danish modern furniture in many places across the country is hot, hot, hot. It's been hot for a few years, but it's starting to decline. So we're all kind of watching the market to see what's next. And hold your breath on this one, but I'm starting to see a pattern emerge that 1970s furniture is beginning to gain some interest. And also, condition issues have a huge impact, often a negative impact. For example, somebody bought a beautiful antique, but they decided to paint it, or maybe they stripped it, or maybe there was a broken leg and they re-glued it. All of these things negatively impact value. I had a client who just couldn't really warm up to what I was trying to tell him. His mother had a cherished teacup and saucer collection on a shelf hanging in the dining room. Yes, they were very old, but they were in terrible condition. The handles had been re-glued on. There were chips and cracks and stains from the tea. I tried to explain to him that even though mother cherished them, that these little teacups and saucers might only sell for $2 or $3 or $4 each. He got angry with me. So I said to him, "Do you want them?" And he said, "No." I said, "Do your children want them?" He said, "No." I looked at his sisters who were about the same age and they said, "No, they don't want them. And their children don't want them." And I ever so politely proved my point that if you don't want them and your children don't want them, What makes you think that someone in the public is going to want them? Oh, someone will buy them, but they're just not going to pay what you think they should pay for it because they were important to mom. And after that, he understood. So desirability is another determining factor. I mean, do you have something that people want? Or do you just have what the rest of us have, average things that we have inherited through the years and now we need to let go of? What personal property should be evaluated? Well, this does change with time, but I can tell you for right now, we've got a very unusual market. For the last maybe 10 to 12 years, it has been declining for personal property, so much, much softer. It is a buyer's market, not a seller's market. And unless the client has something extraordinary, and by extraordinary, I mean something Joe DiMaggio owned and we can prove it, that's extraordinary. And most of us don't have that. Things like that always need to be evaluated. Some antiques need to be evaluated. Jewelry, I'm always a big believer because it's very easy for a lot of my clients to think, oh, it's just junk jewelry. It's just mom and grandma's costume jewelry. And then I get in there and I find all of these wonderful old gemstones set in gold and platinum. So it is very important to have those looked at. And I will tell you very quickly that I had 6 children, a family of 6 that could not agree on anything. They called me in to do some mediation work because they had gotten down to mother's jewelry, which was spread out on the dining room table for me to assess. Well, all of the children there, but there was one in-law there, a daughter-in-law. And I guess mom, who had died, had given this in-law a ring. She was wearing the ring. And one of the sisters said, mom gave her that ring. And everybody thought it was an inexpensive, pretty amethyst, but not a valuable ring. Maybe it was worth about $300. I understand she had a very close relationship with her mother-in-law, but I had to tell them it wasn't an amethyst. It looked like an amethyst to the untrained eye, but I suspected it was a Russian alexandrite. And when I brought that to the children's attention, I said, that needs to be sent off to a lab so you know what it is. And if it is real, and that's a big if, I had never seen one that large, and it would be worth a fortune, probably around $100,000. So the family was wonderful. They sent it off. It actually turned out to be a Russian alexandrite. And then the problems began because the daughter-in-law wanted to keep it and everybody else was angry with her. So to keep everything equitable, I suggested that they sell the ring. They could probably get about $75,000 for it and then treat everybody in the room to a family cruise. And that's exactly what they did. So that's my story about jewelry and gold and platinum. Coin collections are very important too. Gold coins, American silver coins, especially like the larger silver dollars, the Morgan head, the walking Liberty, very, very important to have all of those evaluated. History and military items, because there are collectors worldwide for things of this nature. All wars are considered collectible, but the Civil War era is the #1 collectible, closely followed by World War I and II. I do believe that fine art should be evaluated by a personal property appraiser. And if during their research, they uncover that these items are worthy of additional research and bringing in a fine arts appraiser, that should be done. In my career, most fine art, most oil paintings, for example, don't have that much value. But there have been some that I have found that have been worth $25,000, $50,000, $100,000. Unusual antiques should be looked at. Vintage and antique toys, if they are in excellent condition. But herein lies the problem, that the majority of these items are kept where? Stored where? The attic, the basement. You've got high humidity, you've got critters, you've got cold and heat. So what happens to the condition of these items? They start peeling and chipping, and then what happens to the value? It starts plummeting. So any item that may have written proof or what we call provenance, yes, this baseball really did belong to Joe DiMaggio, and we have proof of it. We have a letter from him. We have a photograph of him holding it. This is what we call provenance. So any item that does have written provenance is certainly worth having evaluated. Now, when it comes to making a game plan, we need to prepare our clients for what's coming. We need to get them to think about making this plan. I started with something small and something simple. I have discovered that our beloved elderly generation has a real problem with paper. They collect paper and they don't get rid of it. In fact, I had a 103-year-old client who had kept all of her taxes back to the time she was a nurse during the World War. And I had to explain to her that she didn't need to keep them that long, but she had, and we had properly shredded them. So thinning out the house by getting rid of old and obsolete documents that are no longer needed, by beginning to organize what is in the house. And by that, I mean financials and medical and other things that are important to know and that the children or beneficiaries should know. To know the location, you know, after you're thinning out the house, oh, well, let's address some of the stuff. If it's broken, if it's reglued, if somebody found a broken dish in the drawer, just let it go. If you find that obsolete hand-turned ice cream churner under the sink and it's broken and it's from 1972 and it's been there since 1973, it's okay to let it go. So another thing that I do as a part of my game plan, I encourage my clients to gift while they are still alive. I think about my precious mother who died suddenly. And about a month before she died, it was just a wonderful visit we had. And my mother had handed me, well, actually, she put a ring on my finger. When I was a little girl, I used to sneak into her bedroom and try that ring on, pretending to be a princess. And here I was, and she put it on my finger and she said, "Sweetheart, I want you to have this ring." She said, "You used to love it when you were a little girl." And we giggled about it. And the ring is not valuable. It's the sentimental value that is attached to it. Well, I didn't know my mother was going to die a month later. So that memory became very special. Gifting while you are still living is a beautiful thing to do because you are minimizing future contention. You are minimizing a lot of, worry for those that are going to be left behind, and that individual gets to see the smile on the recipient's face. So gifting is a great idea. I also am a big believer in open communication between the adult, maybe the older parent and their children. As we talked about earlier, it's very important to provide your children and your heirs or beneficiaries with this game plan so that they're not caught off guard. Imagine my surprise when my parents handed both my sibling and I a binder of all of their financial assets. They had prepaid their funerals, all the way down to what my mother wanted to wear at her funeral. She said, "Kids, when that day comes, and it will come, you're going to be grieving. We don't want you to grieve any more than you have to. Grab the binders and go." So that day did come. We did get that phone call, and I grabbed that binder just as I jumped on that plane. I read it all the way there, and I just was blown away by the love that it took to put that together for her children. Beautiful thing to do. I also think it's really important to incorporate into this game plan finding trusted professionals along the way. Someone like yourself, someone like myself. Maybe you pull in a professional organizer or a senior move manager if they're planning to leave that 4 or 5 bedroom house and move into a 2-bedroom patio home. It's very important to start thinking about these things in advance. I also want to take the opportunity as we start to pull this together to emphasize that these these topics we're talking about are literally a gateway to having conversations with our clients. One of the first things that I do when I go and sit down with a client, they think I'm going to walk in and just start giving them values. And I am going to do that. But what's more important is I want to sit down and visit with that client. I want to get into their head. What are your concerns? What are your goals? How are we going to attain those goals? What are your expectations? And I find that when I take the time to sit down and visit with them and show that they are a priority of mine, have you thought about this? Have you given this any thought? We engage in these lively conversations. I find that they're much more approachable to talking about these more difficult topics. I have also found in my career that one of the main reasons that people don't make big financial decisions, such as selling a house or making large investments, they get frozen. They go through a type of almost like a mental emotional paralysis because of everything they have to deal with back in their home. You have to keep in mind that the older your client is, chances are very good that their home is a little bit of a storage unit for those that have already passed on. I mean, we've got mother stuff, grandmother stuff, great grandma Josephine, great aunt Bertha, and Uncle Joe. I mean, we have taken on and taken on and taken on, and we have reached a point in our culture, in our society, where the younger generations don't want to absorb it anymore. And that's another reason for the saturation that we are seeing in the market. These are all wonderful things to talk about, and it's a golden opportunity for you to talk to your clients as well as your loved ones. It's important to talk about simplifying their life as they're getting older and helping them to simplify their finances in such a way that they can understand it by bringing in an appraiser such as myself who can assess a fair market value on what they have and set their expectations accordingly. And if you and I do our jobs well and we can refer these resources together to our clients, they're going to be in much better shape. We are in a very unique position to give our clients a glimpse of the future, a glimpse of our future. And I just want to leave you with this one thought, that a prepared mind is a peaceful mind. And when I compare my clients who have not planned and the clients who have planned, I can tell you that the ones who didn't plan, it didn't go well at all. I mean, to the point of causing extreme mental issues. And for those that did plan, not that it would take away their grief, but that things just went so much smoother because people gave a little forethought. So thank you so much for taking the time with me today. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Great. Thank you so much, Julie. Ira, you're on mute.
And Julie, thank you so much, and I appreciate you being here. And Cornerstone friends, thank you for having me. At the end of the day, this is all about relationships. And as I listen to Julie each and every time we get together, it's about protecting relationships. It's about enhancing conversation and protecting our futures. So thank you.
I'll open it up just for a minute or two here for some Q&A. And if if you want to type in your question there, just let us know. Julie can provide some information for you. And it looks like we've got one here. Let's see. This is from Phil. If you don't trust family or friends, what other options are there to find an executor?
Well, if there's an attorney involved, they can be chosen as executors as well. That's a unique situation, but you can also choose a financial planner, professional. You can choose somebody that you trust, because it's a very difficult process. And many of my clients who have not trusted their children in the past have hired their estate planning or elder law attorney to get it done.
Great. Okay. And let's see, from Peggy, what's the best way to find a professional organizer?
Oh, the best way to find a professional organizer, you can Google it's called NAPO, NAPO, the National Association of Professional Organizers. Wonderful group of people, and they will help tremendously.
And then one more here, we've got Michael. He's got some rental properties. Do you often encounter clients with businesses or rental properties that you may have to deal with from a standpoint of planning there?
Well, I'm an expert in tangible assets only, not the real estate. I only am an expert in residential contents. So while I do have people that have rental properties, they often need to be cleaned out, maybe if they just acquired them, but that's my only experience with them.
And so, from our perspective, Michael, that might fall on the side of more of the mechanical planning, where we do collaborate with the estate planning attorney and bring in, again, a professional organizer to help with certain aspects of that. But you may want to have certain documents drafted because there may be some issues with transferring those particular assets to the next generation. It looks like that may be it. This has been great, Julie and Ira. Thank you so much. It is totally something that we definitely don't encounter in too many conversations, and it's just what a wonderful reminder here. And I do have, looks like we have one more question from Doug. Let's see, are online wills and testamentary documents valid or even worthwhile? Again, this is something you can answer, and we can add a little color to that as well.
Well, I need to preface this by saying I'm not a lawyer. I have heard that the validity can be challenged. So I always encourage all of my clients to just, go for a consultation with an elder law or estate planning attorney to see what they can do to help them, because it's worth every penny to make sure that it's done correctly. And state laws are different. Every state law is different. So you need to work with somebody within the state that the estate is in.
And if
Julie, how might I find a liquidator?
Oh, the American Society of Estate Liquidators. We've got a database of professionals that are trusted. And I'm actually the director of the American Society of Estate Liquidators. And we train liquidators, we help them build their businesses, and it's always about ethics and being credible and professional, because we realize that we're dealing with people's lifetimes of memories, and you need to hire someone that you trust.
Right. So just a plug here for Julie. Her website is theestatelady.com, and it's a treasure trove, no pun intended, of information there. So feel free to visit her site, and certainly you can reach out to her. She's authored some great books as well. So talk to your advisor with Cornerstone, and we can can put you two together, or we may be able to answer some questions again on more on the mechanical side. But this has been very, very, very good information, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we look forward to everyone logging in again to our next topic. So stay tuned, and we'll be in touch.